I can make anybody in my audience part of the top 10% of secure Americans. Easily. It's so simple.
Welcome to Mitlin Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
Have you ever wondered how vulnerable your identity, finances, and personal data really are in today's digital world? Every click, every password, every online account can either protect you or expose you. Today's guest has made it his mission to help people stay one step ahead of cyber criminals. Robert Siciliano is a cybersecurity awareness expert, good guy hacker, private investigator, bestselling author, and the creator of the Strategic Human Firewall. As CEO of Protect Now LLC and a trusted voice who's been featured on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and The Today Show, Robert cuts through the noise and gives straight talk on how to stay safe in a world where digital threats are everywhere. In this conversation, we're diving into how you can protect your identity, your money, and your peace of mind so you can live and build your future with confidence. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Let's dive into the show. Well, today I have Robert Siciliano with us, and I am so excited for this conversation because I love what he's doing. I know I shared a little bit of it in the intro with everybody, but welcome to the show, Robert.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah.
So listen, we're going to get into everything you're doing today, but the entrepreneurial journey is something that I find, and our listeners more so, find very fascinating because, it's a very windy path, usually different ebbs and flows. Can you share what your path to entrepreneurship was and what that looked like at a, 10,000 foot view?
Sure. So I have been doing what I do for 30 years professionally, 40 years since I was a teenager. I've had a passion for personal security as it relates to violence and theft prevention. And back in the mid-90s, I was speaking, or I still speak to real estate agents on personal protection due to the fact that, they're murdered in this country. And around that time, I had an IBM PS1 consultant, which was the make and model of a Windows 3.0 OS machine that had a 150 megabyte hard drive, right? And I had the ability to accept credit cards over my computer. And shortly after I logged into AOL, I got hacked in the mid-90s. I suffered thousands of dollars in credit card fraud, and I did not know that that was a thing. And so as a result of that hack, losing thousands of dollars, as devastated as I wanted to understand how they did what they did. My business was personal protection, and which is theft prevention as well. And that was a new thing for me. It was a new thing in general. And when I talked to my bank and credit card company, they explained, this is becoming a problem. And my thing has always been reverse engineering the bad actors' process, how they choose their victims, how they, choose their marks. And I started to focus and study on that as well. And that became a part of my presentation because, I saw it as something that was going to be an issue for all of us. And here we are, 30 plus years later, it's a massive, massive problem. And the bad guys are so much more organized today. But consumers, I don't know, are much more sophisticated in regards to their own digital literacy, never mind their cybersecurity hygiene.
Yeah. So, two things that come to mind. One is, so how did you, was that entrepreneurial bug in your system? Was that something you saw growing up, or, was it something you learned and kind of went down that path?
My grandpa, when I was in my early teens, he looked at me and he looked at my mom and he said, Robbie is an entrepreneur. And I remember him saying it just like that. And I kind of had like a French flair to it. And I kind of grasped onto that. And I've always figured out a way to, I guess, hustle, make money, hustle in a good way, And I've always been a solopreneur. Even when I had a job, I always had a side biz. And I am, 30 plus years on my own, supporting a wife and two girls and a mortgage and everything that goes with that. And so I've always had it in my blood. I don't know if I am employable, so to speak.
It's funny that you said that because I call myself unemployable. So I am in the same boat as you. And I also don't want to run over something that you said, because I think this is very important and something that a lot of people don't even realize. And that was going back to what you originally said about real estate agents, personal security, and them being assaulted or even murdered. I don't think many people realize how big an issue that is, because essentially you're going to a strange location, right? Many times an area or a home that's not yours. You're meeting somebody. They're typically there by themselves. And it really creates this terrible opportunity that personal security for realtors and real estate agents is vitally important because of that, right?
Yeah, it's a big deal. And, these are often, part-time, contractors, don't have any formal security training. Sometimes, soccer moms, NASCAR dads, and personal protection is not something that they've ever engaged in because, why? And now they're in a situation where they're at an open house or meeting a complete stranger at odd times of the day. And unfortunately, predators, as we know them, have recognized, that they are a target. And that's been going on for quite some time. And so, the chance of something bad happening to a real estate agent is relatively slim, but there is a chance, like with all of us, but they are considered a high risk profession. And so I developed a program for them in the 90s. And in the early 2000s, the National Association of Realtors brought me on as one of the experts for Realtor Safety Week, which became Realtor Safety Month over the years. And I've been presenting them ever since. I do continuing education programs for them. And of course, not just personal protection, but also they're handling a lot of sensitive information. So as I have evolved and my focus and topic has evolved, so has my presentation to that specific industry due to the fact that, they're handling social security numbers and wiring information, all kinds of sensitive data. And, we as consumers want our realtor to be on top of their security game.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't expecting to go down that route, but I think it's very important for people to know that because it's not something that I think the average person really thinks about as a possible threat.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. Let's shift over to cybersecurity and what you're doing in that space today. My wife often jokes but I think she's really serious, that two-factor authentication is the bane of her existence, right? How important is two-factor authentication?
Yeah. So I tell my wife, and everyone else, that two-factor authentication is your most powerful shield that we have access to today, okay? If a hacker gets your password, they're basically halfway into your life. And what most people don't realize is that all of these data breaches that we see, all these letters that we get in the mail that say your information was compromised, we're going to give you, 2 years of identity theft protection. That's real. There are on average about 3,000 data breaches every single year. Every year. That equates to as many as 15 billion passwords on the dark web.
Right.
Okay. That means like the passwords that you use, many of them being the same passcode across multiple accounts, which is like the kiss of death, are exposed. And so when the bad guy has your email address, which is often a username, and they have your passcode that they get off the dark web, they're no longer hacking you. They're just logging into your accounts. It's really that simple. And so as a result of that, The idea is to make the existing data that the bad guys have, your passwords, useless to the thief. And how do you go about that? Well, one of the best ways, of course, is to change up your passcodes and to never use the same passcode twice, which you should do both of those things. In addition to that, another layer, which I think is fundamental, even more important than changing up your passcodes, is the two-factor authentication. Because even if the bad guy has your passcode, they have to have your mobile phone in their possession in order to effectively log in. So two-factor authentication is the second lock that stops them cold. It's the difference between a minor password reset and really, total financial catastrophe. It's annoying for 5 seconds, but then it saves you 5 years of headaches.
Let's pause for a moment. What actually brings you joy? It's something most people never think about, yet it shapes how your life unfolds. You're busy. You make responsible choices. You even plan ahead. But have you slowed down long enough to ask if what you're building supports a life you enjoy living? That's the reason I built my YouTube channel, to help you bring more joy to your money journey. Sure, we'll talk about all the essentials, but my real goal is to help you connect your finances with what brings you joy, because money is the tool that funds the moments that matter. If you want to explore that connection more deeply, visit my YouTube channel at Larry Sprung. Are all multi or two-factor authentication created equal, or is there a fundamental difference between using a text two-factor authentication versus a authenticator? Is one preferred over the other, or it really doesn't matter?
So I would say that in the end, the authenticator is probably a bit more secure. But hear me out when I provide that, I guess, example. I am all about security's got to be easy. If it's not easy, people aren't going to do it. Security's got to be convenient. If it's not convenient, people are just going to, not engage. So I say, look, your mobile phone is with you 24/7, 365. It's in your literal hand for hours a day. Okay. And so if two-factor authentication via SMS, which is text message, is easier and more convenient, then that's what you should do. If in a corporate setting they require an authenticator app, fine, do that. But for most consumers, I say just use text message as two-factor authentication, and you are a tougher target.
Okay. All right. So basically, if go the path that's easiest, so you use it, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. And two, if given text and authentication, if it's no difference for you, use the authenticator. But if it's going to mean that you're not using it, then use the text messaging option.
Plain and simple. Security's got to be easy. It's got to be convenient, or we're not going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So listen, I want to gear this more towards business owners, because we have a lot of them listening, and we've seen a tremendous growth, especially in the last 6 years, in terms of remote work. What can business, or what should business owners be doing to increase their security and security awareness for themselves, their businesses, and their stakeholders?
Well, for one thing, security as a part of doing business can be a do-it-yourself, right? But security is a profession. Like, being a financial service professional is a profession. Certainly people can, make their own investments. They can manage their own accounts. They can, invest in the stock market and so forth. But I have a financial service professional myself, and I wouldn't even think of not having one, because they know what they're doing. It's what they do. It's what you do. I'm not going to do it on my own at all. And when it comes to security, I can do a bit of do-it-yourself stuff, but I also have somebody that I work with that knows more than I do, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And as a small business, investing in a managed service provider which is a company that comes in and manages your network, depending on the size and scope of that network, or even what's called a virtual chief information security officer, or a VCISO, is someone that comes in and does vulnerability scans. They look for vulnerabilities in your network. They recommend hardware and software upgrades and so forth. Okay. All of that is, serious considerations that need to be made, again, depending on the size and scope of your organization. So if you run a business, say, with remote staff, you can't rely on just trust. You need to implement, zero trust, which I advise owners to mandate password managers, use encrypted virtual private networks, run simulated phishing tests. Phishing simulation is something that you see in maybe 60% of all businesses. Not all of them do it. You have to create a culture where security awareness really is part of the job description, not just an IT afterthought. And security awareness training is something that I think is necessary for all business owners, their staff, where you bring somebody in either remotely or on site that engages each of the employees on what security is, what security isn't, what to do every time the phone rings, an email comes in, you get a text message. Security awareness itself is something that's significantly lacking in our culture. Most of us, when it comes to security, we look at security as kind of a bad thing, as weird as that might sound. Let me ask you a quick question. I'm a guy, and this is actually true. I have 20 plus security cameras. Okay. Maybe a little excessive, but if you don't know me, and you hear, okay, this guy's got 20 security cameras, what might be your first reaction to, okay, this guy wakes up every day, he's got 20 security cameras. What's his disposition, his worldview, his outlook? 20 security cameras, he must be what?
You would think that he's concerned, paranoid, perhaps, something that's might be taking place that would never take place, something along those lines.
So the operative word being paranoid, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about security awareness.
I don't know that that's a bad thing when it comes to security awareness.
Well, let's flesh that out just a little bit, right? In our culture, when we look at, so paranoia, as we know it, right, is actually the medical community diagnoses it as a mental health disease, right? And so when we as a culture look at security and paranoia in the same sentence, I think that devalues security.
I agree.
I think that dichotomy of, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to have to always look over my shoulder. I don't want to have to worry. I don't want security in my life because I just want to be free. I don't want to have to think about bad actors targeting me. Mm-hmm. That's how a lot of us think. And so instead of doing something about security, we essentially go into denial. It can't happen to me. And we do nothing. We don't manage our passwords effectively. We don't engage in best security practices. We don't lock the doors to our homes. We don't have home security systems. We basically do nothing as a result. And so security awareness training should be teaching what security actually is. It's about gaining control. It's about putting systems in place. It's about small changes in behavior that result in you being a tougher target versus worry, fear, paranoia.
I think to your point, it's the opposite of paranoia. It's really putting in a culture of being preventative. And if something happens, having the data and the wherewithal to rectify it. So I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on.
That's what security awareness should be. But I would say 98+% of the presentations and training that I see causes more worry and fear, and really doesn't hit it doesn't hit it on the head. And we preach evolve to what we call security appreciation, which is you see the actual value security has in your life for yourself and your family and your kids and your identity.
Yeah. So when you talk about presentations, I think this is important, because you talk about, when it comes to education, which is sometimes done through presentations, why is it so important to differentiate in those?
Well, I differentiate my teachings because, a CEO has a different digital footprint than, say, a college student. If I give everybody the same generic advice, they tune out. I tailor my message so it hits home for a specific person that I'm talking to, the specific audience I'm engaging. When advice feels personal, the behavior actually changes. My philosophy is and has always been that all security is in fact personal. And when you think personal security, your first reaction is, violence prevention or theft prevention. But what's more personal than, your digital identity, your social security number, And so when you speak to where a person is in their life and regarding their own worries and concerns regarding security and how it affects them individually, then they begin to kind of sit on the edge of their seat and, they begin to perk up and be like, oh, this is about me. This is about my personal security. I have questions, that I've always had, but never had an opportunity to ask. And here you go. And as you communicate where the person is in your life, they begin to look at all security, both personally and professionally, how they manage the data at work as well, in such a way where security becomes something that they want more in their life versus something that they worry about and are fearful of and don't quite understand.
Yeah. And, one of the things you said earlier was about the cameras. You gave that example, right? I don't lock the doors, et cetera. What do you have to say to the person listening to this who's thinking, hey, well, I live in a safe neighborhood, so I don't need to lock my car door. I don't need to lock my house door because I live in a safe, what do you say to those people?
So I think that most people feel safe and most people should feel safe. Like, we live in a relatively safe country when you think about it, but like the reality of it is that bad things do happen. The reality of a real estate agent being assaulted, attacked, murdered is relatively slim, but there is a chance. The chance of you being injured or worse in a car accident is relatively slim. But every day we put the seatbelt on because it's the smart thing to do, and that's all security. It's just putting systems in place because it's the smart thing to do. It's making better decisions. I want people to stop seeing security as a burden and start to see it as, being empowering, right? When your digital house is locked down, when your physical house is locked down, you have the freedom to explore the internet and to grow your business without looking over your shoulder. Because you recognize risk, you see it coming. I call this the strategic human firewall. You go from, passive security, where I trust everything, which most people do, to I verify everything and I'm looking for the motivation behind the phone call, the email, the text message. What are they really trying to accomplish here? Is this real? Is it fake? Is it a scammer? Is it really my mom? Is it really my grandson? And so forth, Good security doesn't slow you down. It gives you confidence, And think of it like this. When you're watching the 6 o'clock news and something bad and tragic happens in a neighborhood somewhere, which we see every night of the week, if you're watching the 6 o'clock news. When the local news channel goes into the neighborhood with a reporter and a camera guy, right? And they knock on the neighbor's door and the neighbor comes outside and they ask the neighbor, so what do you think about what happened? What does the neighbor always say?
They were shocked, surprised.
Yeah. You never thought it was going to happen here.
Right.
We never want to think it's going to happen here.
Right.
We choose to not ever think it's going to happen here. We don't lock our doors because I don't want to live like that, people say. Yeah. That's the most common answer. When I say, how many people, when I do a full presentation, how many of you have a home security system? I might have 100 people in the room, 500 people in the room. If I get 15% have a home security system, that's a lot, which means 85% don't have a home security system. Because they say the most common answer is, I don't want to live like that. I just want to be free. I don't want to have to worry. As if the presence of a home security system is going to cause fear.
Yeah.
That's just how we are. We're kind of silly like that, right?
I didn't realize that's surprising that it's actually that low. So, I mean, in your view, are there certain things, like maybe 2 or 3 things that everybody should be thinking about in terms of their own security, right? Whether it's digital or personal, either side, that they should be implementing regardless of where they live in the U.S., what they're doing, et cetera, and will make them or should make them feel empowered. Are there a couple of things that everybody should be doing?
I always tell everyone that I can make anybody in my audience part of the top 10% of secure Americans easily. It's so simple. Number one, less than 10% of all Americans utilize what's called the password manager.
Yeah.
Password manager. It's such a simple tool. Some of them are free.
Which those get hacked too, by the way.
So keeping in mind that banks, password managers, the US government, right, are hacked every single day. Okay. Every day. Hundreds and thousands of times a day. Okay. But how successful are those hackers in getting access to our data and our dollars, our passwords, and so forth? Like, thousands and thousands of hacks every year, millions. But that doesn't mean that we give up and throw our hands up in the air and say, I'm not going to use a password manager because they can get hacked. I'm not going to install a home security system because they can be hacked. I'm not going to put my money in a bank because they can be hacked. That fatalistic point of view that many of us have is kind of like actually a justification for not engaging in security practices because, well, why bother installing a home security system if they can break in anyways?
All right. So top 10% password manager puts you in that wheelhouse. What else?
So password manager, changing up your passcodes, never using the same passcode twice, and the password manager facilitates that process for you. Right? Two-factor authentication, like we discussed, right? So between two-factor authentication, a password manager, and never using the same passcode twice, you're already in the top 10%. It's truly as simple as that, along with, of course, updating your software for your mobile phone and your laptop and your desktop, updating your browser when it suggests automatic updates for hardware and software are always the best. You do those 2-3 things, you're already top 10%.
Awesome. So listen, we're in wealth management and there is an intersection between technology and wealth management. And one of the things that we've seen, an uptick in is people's digital assets, right?
Yeah.
So what do people need to understand around like planning for those digital assets in terms of digital estate planning? Most
people have a will, for their house, for their stuff, for their investments, but they don't have any continuity plan in regards to their data, their passwords, their online accounts. Digital estate planning is making sure your loved ones can access your photos, your accounts, your crypto assets, after you're gone. Without a plan, your digital legacy is either lost forever, left to the state, or left wide open for identity thieves to scavenge. I would say in my own life, I have a continuity plan. I have, power of attorney for my daughters. They have it for me. We have a will. We have a family password manager that everybody has access to. Yeah. And I've also told my girls and my honey that when I go, pay for my mobile phone account for at least a year or two for that.
Right.
Because this is part of the two-factor authentication. Right. And so when you set up your afterlife digitally so that your loved ones can access it, then they have access to all of your investments. So that can be done via a password manager, backed up with an Excel file, a Google Sheet, which is also password protected with two-factor authentication, right? And then from there, like everything that you have worked for in your life that you plan on passing down to your loved ones is all accessible to them.
Right. Yeah, great points. And I believe in my, I'm like 99.9%, like in mine and my wife's will, there is mentions of what is supposed to happen with all of our digital assets to help protect them, which is, something I think fairly new in the last 10 or 15 years. Before that, it was, probably when we did our first will way back when, it wasn't really something that was prevalent or something we needed to be aware of. But those tips are excellent. And the password manager can be a great facilitator to hold all that information and be available. And, you could even, name loved ones. I think Apple, for example, and Google has a similar thing for their Android phone, that it has a loved one built in, that if you do not access the phone, that they can, and they'll be alerted as well. So we have to use these tools that you're talking about to make that transition and not lose all of these assets, digital assets that we've accumulated over the years.
Your loved ones should have access to your mobile phone password. Very important.
Yeah. So listen, Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on. These were some great tips. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. And we are all about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset. And we ask each of our guests the same final question. And everybody is waiting for the answer here. So what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
I start off every day with a digital detox. Like, I start off like the first hour, no phone, no computer, just movement, light stretching, just to get clear for the day. I focus on my big 3 goals for the day, whatever that might be, without checking a single email. I put myself in a proactive mindset rather than a reactive one, so that I stay sharp and ready to help others and, live my best life.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's a great way to start the day. I do a lot of that similarly as well. Big 3 is hugely important for me every day, so I make sure that my focus is there. So thank you for sharing that. And Robert, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about what you're doing, what you're up to, want to connect with you, what's the easiest and the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'm all over the interwebs, on social. If you can spell Siciliano, you can easily find me. Otherwise, I'm at protectnowllc.com, protectnowllc.com.
All right. And you're on the web, not the dark web, right?
Well, actually, we are all on the dark web.
You're right. You're right about that. You're right. So, listen, Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for the time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Wow, what an eye-opening conversation with Robert Siciliano. In a world where cybercrime, identity theft, and online scams are becoming more sophisticated every day, Robert reminds us that protecting our digital lives isn't just about technology. It's about awareness, habits, and taking back control. From building your own strategic human firewall to staying one step ahead of cyber criminals, today's conversation showed that safeguarding your identity, your finances, and your future starts with knowledge and action. If today's discussion got you thinking differently about security, privacy, and protecting what matters most, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is the Mitlin Money Mindset, where we explore the ideas, habits, and stories that help you build a life of confidence, purpose, and joy. Robert Siciliano and everything he is up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes. And we'll see you next time on the Mitlin Money Mindset.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mitlin Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Mitlin Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Guests on the Mitlin Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.